And take two. Welcome back, everybody. I wanted to welcome the beautiful Kay Griffin from Melbourne. She's our senior BSP consultant and supervisor who's helped organize this event, alongside with Glenda, which is why we're all here, from Ecuador. So excited to finally got us all together and to have this meeting. And also Brainspotting Australasia Pacific that is organizing this, and to kickstart this little introduction to Brainspotting specialization in group. Can I pass over to you, Kay?
Thanks, Nula. Hi, Nula. Hi, Glenda. Great to hang out with you guys again. We've been doing a bit of that over the last couple of months. I just want to start with an acknowledgement of country. So I acknowledge that the Wadawurrung people are the traditional owners of the land that I am working on. I'd like to acknowledge and extend my respect and appreciation to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and the culture and all the hopes of the Wadawurrung people. I'd also like to express my gratitude in sharing of this land, my sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural loss of that sharing, and our hope that we may walk forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. I also acknowledge that each of you who are joining or watching this recording are also coming from a land that has been traditionally owned, and I also would like to acknowledge that. So Glenda, can you acknowledge the traditional owners from where you are?
Yes, thank you, Kay. I'm actually in Quito, and the traditional people from here are the Quitucaras.
Thank you. And Nula?
I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people and blessings. That was a very beautiful word. So.
Thank you. So I thought I might sort of talk a little bit about how this all came about. Glenda and I met about 4 years ago in July in Boulder, Colorado at David Graham's Phase 4 training. And we kind of found that we had a synchronicity that was nice, and we've continued that contact for those years. In 2020, Glenda and I co-facilitated an online supervision group. And that's when the discussions really started about Glenda's breadth and knowledge and enthusiasm around group brain spotting in specialty areas. It started then. 2021, Glenda and I were on an international panel at the Brainspotting conference, and we spoke about brain spotting in parts. 2020, I was so aware of Glenda's enthusiasm. She has such knowledge, such generosity, such depth of training and skills. And it seemed like it was absolutely important to explore the brain spotting group training and specialty training and hopefully bring it into Australia and Asia Pacific. But it didn't stop there. We had COVID and many other things. And then we had a window, and Nula and I caught up in 2022. And we sat and we shared this concept and Nula's enthusiasm, and that came on board. And here we are, the three of us, 2023, hoping that we will be in Australia, August, bringing this training live and online. So that's a little bit of the background.
And I can't wait. And you know, the groups are going to be small. We're not taking on a lot of people, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So it's going to be limited placement. It's going to be intimate. It's going to be fun. I know it's going to be fun because there's creativity there.
And the three of us.
And the three of us.
Of course.
And I also know because a friend and a colleague of mine just did your training. She's from Melbourne, in fact. She did your training, which just finished, which was in Ecuadorian time. So she was up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, crazy cuckoo. But the rap she gave me on your workshop, phenomenal, right? Phenomenal rap. It was just the energy, the lenses that you brought, you know, of creativity, how you can work with groups. Groups can be defined, though, as, Glenda, I'm going to pass over to you.
Well, groups can be defined, you know, a pair can also be a very simple group, right?
Yeah.
So if you work with couples, if you work with family members, if you work with more than 2 people, well, that's
Yeah.
a group,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not going to go into that very deeply, but as Kay was saying, as we were talking before, you know, maybe the people, all the roles that we have living within us. Well, I have a group of people, right? And I think that looking at things also from a, you know, traditional perspective that Kay was kind enough to bring about today, for me, a group is also the people that stand behind me so that I can be here right now, right? So it can also be thought of that way, at least for me.
So that sounds to me like there's the opportunity for so much healing in terms of present and past and future from this group work.
I think so from group, you know, like and both of you, I guess, and everybody watching this, we do the work that we do because I think that we have this firm belief and feeling that we can change things, right? And one of the things that I have in a natural way because of my my studies incorporated in this group work is psychodrama. And one of the things that I love about psychodrama is this phrase that Moreno used to say, you know, we can change and rewrite the scripts of our lives, right? I thought, wow, that's so wonderful, that's so powerful. Yes.
Yeah. There's a rebirthing in that statement, right?
Yes.
Because we've inherited scripts as well, right?
Yes. And we can decide, you know, like we can decide which of those inheritance, how we're going to receive them, how we are going to honor them, and how in a very humble and, you know, kind manner, we might also give some of that back because we might not want some of that heritage, right?
Right.
And when you think about doing that work individually, and then the concept of adding the group people to that same healing work, talk to us a little bit about what you see different when you get that group energy in that same concept.
Oh, I see it in a lot of ways, but I think maybe just talking about two of them is important. One of them, you know, when we talk about dual attunement, how do we do dual attunement with a group, right? Yeah. So for us as clinicians or leaders of the group, working with the call regulation and working with that dual attunement sets up to be an experience that is lighter on us somehow, right? Sometimes when we're working one-on-one, we need to be there, you know, like by ourselves, too strong to hold people, right? But just being with the group, we have this facility of diluting that energy. If we have prepared the group well enough, we have the possibility of diluting that within the group, right? And now, you know, as leaders of the group, we hold the group, but the group also holds itself, right? So I think that's one. And the other thing is that there's so many, you know, therapeutic factors about the group itself, how people learn from each other, how many roles they can see, not only us as, you know, individuals in the group, as therapists in you know, in one-on-one treatment, but also how they can learn from all the knowledge that each person who is a member of the group brings to the group, right?
We're co-creating.
And Nula, you spoke about the question you wanted to ask Glenda, that it's itching for me to hear her answer.
Right. Do you remember what question that was that I wanted to ask?
to give us an understanding of how Glenda came to put together the
Yes,
concept.
that question.
Yeah, that
Forgot
one.
about that one. Yeah, that's how we're going to rock and roll, guys. So, how did you come to this? How did you develop it? Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was, you know, I do talk more about this in the training, but for me, it has to do with who I am. I am a person from Ecuador, Latin American, Indian country. You know, I'm a gregarious person, right? So for me, community is important. So that I think that has been a huge part of it. And that's why when I started studying psychodrama, I also fell in love with it because it's group work, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it has to do with who I am and also everything that I've learned, psychodrama, therapy, that changed my life in terms of how I related to others, even personally outside work, right? This concepts of therapy and how we can have better relationships. So when I started working in where I started working, were those were very communities who were very I don't like the word poor, but deprived maybe of economic means,
Yes.
right? So when I started working, I had a lot of people waiting where I was doing, like this volunteer work. And I thought, like maybe we start working in groups instead of, one-on-one. And then a lot of the things that I would see that came from that lack of privilege was trauma, right? That emerged from that. So I was thinking, like, how do I, start working also with the trauma in a deeper manner that I know, like Brainspotting. So that's how I sort of just very organically started integrating that, right? And I also teaching EMDR. So for me, like, and I'll explain a little more in the training, right? But I think that it just happened organically. Working with groups, needing to, and I think that's one of the reasons that I think that working with groups is important, because in a 2 hour slot, a 2 hour time, you can work with 20 people, 30 people, depending on how many people you have helping. But if you're working only one-on-one, you can work with one person or two, right? So I think it's very, I don't like the word efficient, but that's the only one that comes to mind, time efficient, right? So we can reproduce this possibility of community and healing and making new meaning of being next to each other and, healing also, while we are with people who are going to be holding us as we do so, right? We're going to be there for each other. And,
So,
and if I may, that's
yes.
one of the reasons I call the group Minkay, that I think it's important and I think goes with this. Minkay, Minga, it's a word in Quechua that means reciprocity. That means, I'm here for you today. I know you're going to be here for me tomorrow if I need to. And the community is here for one another, right? And I think for me, that's what group work and group Brainspotting is about. Like the possibility of I'm going to be fixing, like whatever I need to look in myself, and you're going to be working on whatever both of you need to work on yourselves, but we're going to be doing it together. And maybe, one of you will say a word or a feeling or an experience that I will, take that and use that to work with myself too, right? And vice versa, yeah.
I remember when Nuala and I were supporting a phase 3 training last year that David ran for Asia Pacific, and Nuala and I shared with the other practice coaches and supports that we were thinking of bringing Glenda out, and David's response was, fantastic, she is the international expert in group brain spotting. What a wonderful opportunity. So I think that you're known far more than you realise you are known, Glenda, in terms of your skills and knowledge and your enthusiasm for training and learning. You're welcome. There's one question I have. And I'm definitely coming to the training, but if I didn't come to the training, what would I miss out on? What would I not get to know and understand? What's the key take homes that we don't get unless it's in this group environment?
I'm not very good at saying that because I will give you some ideas, but I'm not very good at saying that because I haven't been to every other training. So I don't know, if you if you go to another training, well, you'll have here or not in others, right? But I think by coming here, you will definitely have an experience of being part of a group, right? So even if you have never worked with a group before, you will take ideas, not only neocortical ideas of how to work with groups, but you would have also gone through the experience of being in a group, right? Because that's part of, and that's why the groups, I asked for them to be no bigger than, a certain number, maybe 26 people, 28 people, right? When we're online, when we're in person, that can be a little bigger. Because the idea for me and what's important for me is that we learn through the actual experience. And that begins the moment we say hello the first day we meet. Right? So I think that I think that's incredibly important, right? I also think you will miss on the experience of really feeling the connection with the group, really feeling that you're part of something that can be so much bigger. And it's at least that's the experience that I have and the feedback that I've got from people, being part of this wonderful, almost magical experience that lasts for so long, for 3 days or for whatever, the training lasts, right? And then through that, I think also you will miss out on the experience of broadening your ideas of what Brainspotting is from a group perspective, right? That is the same that you have learned in phase 1 and 2, but it's very different because it's for groups, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm getting out of this too is because you've integrated other modalities into this, training as well. And that's what we say with Brainspotting, that it's designed to be integrated with whatever it is that you bring, right? But people are going to experience integration of other modalities with Brainspotting. I
Definitely.
think that's amazing. That would inspire me, and I can imagine others how they could bring in, whether they're trained, in any other, IFS, psychodrama, as you say, therapy, sand play, theraplay, EMDR, whatever, to experience and witness the integration. And the idea that a group starts with 2. It's not that you need to have a lot of people. So if you're doing couples, work, but also not only that, but I know that when I approach my work with my clients, I always ask, who is in your support? Who are the others who are supporting you, right? And that sometimes we can bring that person in, for a session to do group work, right? To amplify the healing, because healing does happen in community, not just by seeing us once a week, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard from all of that, Glenda, was that how wonderful it is to not only have your own journey in healing, but to be part of somebody else's and somebody else's and somebody else's. And then if we think about the collectiveness of that, what beautiful benefits there is. You've listed a few objectives and you've talked about neurological basis of trauma, and you've talked about stages of the group and crisis intervention. So there's huge breadth that you're going to cover in the 3 days to start with. Can you tell us just a tad about that?
Yes, I've been thinking that maybe we need more days, but not this time.
But you can talk fast, can't you?
Oh, yes, I can talk I do not know if anybody will understand what I said, but I can talk really, really fast. But yeah, no, most definitely. The idea for me, everybody asks what's the setup? What's the Brainspotting setup for this, for that? What's the Brainspotting setup for groups, right? And I think, what we are going to be seeing in this training is actually how to do a setup for group Brainspotting, right? It's not the type of Brainspotting that we're going to be doing for processing, but actually how to set up the space for the group itself. And I think within that, one of the things that we're going to be talking about, I have also, I feel very privileged, right? And I think I have been there before. I studied with Bruce Perry, right? So I've integrated also all the NMT neurosequential model of therapeutics in the theory, right? And how, for me, it has been really interesting, even, how I have incorporated in the theory of group work, all the work that Bruce Perry has done, right? So we do talk from a developmental perspective, right? And we also talk about how to put that together with this beautiful concept of the neuroexperiential model from Brainspotting, right? And through that, I think there's this, for me, there is this here in Ecuador, we have these wonderful views and wonderful mountains, and sometimes you're going through a very narrow road, and then at the corner of one that you feel that you're going to the Avis, you stop there in the corner, the road goes on, but then you see this beautiful sight that just opens up, right? And for me, even just like thinking about and preparing group Brainspotting to help others understand, what my process has been of doing this, did that, right? Like sort of opening the scope. So from that, you have, how to work with crisis that has certain types of work. From that, you also have, what do you do with an open group? What do you do with a closed group? What do you do with even the groups that you're thinking of, and how we can plan for that, right? Yeah. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Kay, but that's what
No,
came
you
to.
did. It was really good. Now, there's heaps of questions I've got, but there's one more that I'd like to ask, and then I'm going to stop asking because we could just go on for hours. um, we're offering a specialty 1 day online after the 3 days, and particularly that's piqued my interest is some of the autoimmune issues, some of the health challenges, some of those common things that people experience, one of which is diabetes. And we know that diabetes is phenomenally increasing across the world from type 2 diagnosis. And I'm just curious, can you just talk a little bit about the specialty group?
Well, in that specialty group, what we're going to be doing is also introducing a lot more psychodynamic and psychometric theory that I think will really help with the issues or the presentations that you're speaking about, and how to work with them from a lot of creativity, how to work with them, not blaming people for their style of life or feeling bad because I got certain genetic traits from my family, but actually being able to own whatever experience they're going through and accepting whatever they're going through, and also looking ahead, having goals, and maybe having an idea of how to walk towards them, right? That I think it's very important. So for example, with diabetes, maybe you need to stick to the diet. That's one of the groups that we had, right? So what are the steps that you need to take to actually be able to achieve your goal, right? And then if I imagine that being a road that has a lot of, or maybe not so many, but maybe they're big, obstacles. So that's what we were going to be working on and talking about and seeing how we can work through that. Yeah.
And will there be a variation if you were to talk about type 1 versus type 2 diabetes in group work?
We are going to be talking about the neuro experience, right?
Okay. Yep.
So
Yep.
I think that it depends how people are actually experiencing that. I think that for people who have been, started having symptoms from diabetes, the younger they were, they probably had a lot more obstacles, a lot more trauma, probably a lot more conflict with even friends, right? If I'm in school and a lot of my friends are eating junk food and I'm not allowed to have any of those, right? And whatever that meant for that person.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Wow. Well, we're going to come to an end right now because we want to keep this short and sweet. And I really appreciate having that we all got together. Thank you so much, Glenda. And I've got lots more questions like you too, Kay. But right.
Yeah,
And I
as
want to,
always.
as always, I want to know so much more. But I'm really, really excited that we've got this one down. And I hope everybody, if you're getting a little bit more excited about us bringing Glenda out. And if you've got any questions, please send an email through. And I'm going to say goodbye now.
So thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Yeah.